All right, guys. Well, as soon as you see the title of this, you know what kind of video this is going to be. We're going to talk not about Joe DiMaggio, but about the younger DiMaggio, the little professor, Dom DiMaggio. Do you know anything about him? I bet most of you probably don't know too much about Dom DiMaggio. We'll take a quick look here and just sort of go through the stats very, very briefly. And, of course, this is going to be a little bit small for you to see. I don't know why this is only on 100% zoom. We need to be on 150 because of the way that my monitor works. That's a little bit better as I look over at the other side. Dom DiMaggio, player that WAR kind of favors at 111 OPS. So, okay, you know, not too bad. 7-time All-Star, though, and that's bordering maybe on Hall of Fame territory, though the 33.5 WAR would probably make most people upset. DiMaggio, of course, missed, key seasons, 1, 2, 3 seasons because of military service, which is the same of his brother Joe, same of his teammate Ted Williams, and a whole bunch of other players from this particular era. If you are interested in traditional statistics and you sort of eschew all the fancy, stuff that's written down here, and you just take a look at the sort of player he was, you can see he's a fairly, I would say a consistent player who's going to give you, maybe right under 10 home runs a year, about, 30 or so doubles every single season. Very good at scoring runs, probably good at his speed, and will drive in runners, maybe not drive in a ton, but will give you about, 60, 70, 80 runs batted in, depending upon who he's playing with and where he is in the order. Traditionally, we would usually say that his 46th season was his best season, but, we'll take a look and see what the other statistics like about him. And interestingly enough, OPS Plus will also tell you 123 OPS Plus in 1946. You can see he had a little bit of power, maybe not a whole ton of it, and was very, very good at getting on base. Although, as we all know, this is the era of the base on balls. Go take a look at what WAR thinks about him. We won't talk about what we think about WAR. He is somewhat beneficiary of good treatment by WAR in that he played in center field most of his career. And so as a result, his position adjustment is only -1 as opposed to what would happen if he were in, say, left field. Since we know that left field is so considerably different from center field, pretty good R field for the most part. I haven't read a whole ton about this. I'm not aware of anybody who will tell you that Dom DiMaggio was like some absolutely incredible outfielder, but he was probably above average. And that's kind of what this reflects here. Defensive WAR, again, does not show, if you trust this, that he was necessarily a hugely great and fully competent player, but, good enough. I would argue he was probably good enough to play the role he needed to play in center field. Now, interesting things when looking through his biography is that he was married in 1949, finally, to his wife. That's an interesting thing to note. And I know that the country was a lot different back then. It's actually common for a lot of guys to come up to the major leagues at that time already married. It's something I've noticed as I go through these biographies. Dom DiMaggio is a little bit different. Of course, he was in the shadow of his brother Joe. He was 32 when he ended up eventually getting married. Unlike Joe, he wasn't married to a supermodel. This is his wife. Emily was her name, and I don't know very much about how his marriage proceeded or anything like that. It doesn't really say very much that I can see here in the end of his biographies. If you know more about that, let me know. I'm sure that there's probably more information out there than I'm missing. There's always something I'm missing. Interesting thing about this article, of course, from the Boston Globe in January 1949 is that DiMaggio says his .285 average is misleading because, after all, didn't he bat in those 87 runs? We could talk back and forth about that. That's the same sort of conversation you would have today, which says that, this guy, maybe he doesn't get a hit every time he gets up, but he's pretty good at getting hits in the clutch in those important situations. And then we can argue about whether the clutch is a thing or not. Boy, we could have arguments about that one probably all day long. But, of course, that's not really the purpose of doing this, right? My purpose is not just to give you a little history lesson about Dom DiMaggio, who most of you, I assume, because you're watching this channel, have probably heard of. The real thing that we want to look at is how DiMaggio is doing in this replay. And that's going to be the next part here. Now, my apologies again for how illegible this is going to probably wind up being for you. I can only put my blame on the creator of Diamond My Baseball. We're going to go actually here to the screen view. I doubt you can see any of this. DiMaggio right now, and we're looking at the full Major League statistics. He's second in batting average. He's hitting .382. He hit .307 in real life. He's been hitting very, very well in the replay. Second in on-base percentage to his teammate Ted Williams. He's got a .477 on-base percentage. Williams is at .493. We have DiMaggio hitting above Williams in the lineup for the time being, because earlier on in the season he had a higher slugging percentage. That's going to change as soon as we hit the next Sunday, because I can see that Williams has a 595 slugging percentage. DiMaggio has gone down to a more normal 536, right? I mean, this is still a pretty incredible state of things for the Red Sox. DiMaggio so far has an argument to be made for him to be the MVP of the American League. Just looking at his overall offensive contribution, he's had 2 home runs so far after how many games? 26 games is all. So you can imagine that he may end up surpassing his real-life total of 8 home runs. He's driven in 17, only drove in 60 in real life, which is pretty interesting to see. But that depends upon where he's hitting in the order. See, we have him leading off right now, and he's still been able to drive in 17 runs. I think that what's helped him has been getting more at-bats, more plate appearances, because he's been leading off, walking quite a bit as he did in real life. We have to go over here to the secondary screen for that, I think. No, maybe we don't. Oh, here we go. Yeah, 20 walks so far as opposed to 96 in real life. He's going to get over 100 walks likely in Diamond Mine unless there's some major injury. And I mean, he played in 145 games in real life. I don't think that he had a huge injury. Now, there are some things that are different, right? I haven't been trying to steal with him much. In real life, he had 9 stolen bases, was caught 7 times. In Diamond Mine so far, he's only been caught twice, and it's because whenever I've been managing the Red Sox, I'm not going to steal with him. There's no real point. He doesn't have a particularly good stealing or running rating. It's all fair. So, I mean, not too much that we're going to be able to do with that. So far, though, so good. Not much you can say, of course, about these fielding statistics, other than that he's already been part of 3 double plays, which is impressive for somebody from center playing in center field. This is mostly because of when the computer and when I'm playing on the other team, decides to send the runner. As you know from watching me play, I try to do that sparingly, but obviously I haven't been doing that sparingly enough. 5 assists already as opposed to 13 in real life for the whole season. And this is one of those points that I kind of want to make when we're talking a lot about, outfield positions, either corner outfield positions or center field. One of the weaknesses that I see in WAR is the fact that when we talk about these outfield positions, we're focusing on defense as if we were able to directly compare defense between one player and another, and it's not really the case. I mean, if you're going to play even in center field, where you're going to get a whole bunch of putouts, right? Dom had 420 putouts in real life, which is kind of expected for center field. You're not necessarily going to be able to play a huge role in other things, a whole bunch of assists and so on and so forth. 13 assists for him in real life as opposed to 5 so far in Diamond Mine. So, people, the computer or I, are a little bit more aggressive maybe on the base pass, than we really should be. But, again, the problem you have is that, the fly ball is hit to him and he makes the catch or he doesn't. Once we start getting into WAR territory, and I'm talking especially about those seasons for which we're kind of doing guesswork looking backwards, it's anybody's guess. You don't know where the ball was hit. You don't know if the base hit was actually playable or not. You're kind of guessing. You're kind of coming up with it after the fact based on loose play-by-play records and using a formula that nobody else can know. And so, that's one of the problems when it comes to looking at this. My argument has always been we probably should be using the statistics that we have available to us instead of trying to make up new statistics totally out of nothing, right? Now, does he deserve the excellent outfield throw rating or not? I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to tell without looking deeply into it and trying to figure out exactly what they were thinking when they created this Diamond Mine League. But overall, I think it's pretty good. He's playing a little bit over the top. One of the reasons why is because he's absolutely dominating right-handed pitching. This is a problem we've talked about before, right? When you have these splits in Diamond Mine baseball, it does mean something, but you can see against lefties where he was a little bit more down to earth. He's been totally pitiful so far this season, but against righties, and he's mostly faced righties, he's been an absolute terror. So, for a guy who played 145 games, I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference, but there's a question as to whether this distinction between his batting against left and right-handed batters should be followed or not, right? Because there's a question as to whether this will produce a more acceptable statistical outcome than just using the historical mean between left-handed and right-handed batters, right? Just eyeing this, I'm going to say that this is probably, for a guy who's a right-handed batter, this is probably not a significant finding, right? And so as a result, using lefty-righty splits is probably more likely to create a bigger split than you need, which is what we're seeing so far in this season. But, who knows? We're early on in the replay. there you have it for Dom DiMaggio. I mean, he's kind of a forgotten person. A lot of people don't talk much about him, and we haven't even started talking about Vince DiMaggio. Yeah, but so far in this replay, he's been really the star of the DiMaggio brothers. He's definitely been a lot more notable than Joe, who doesn't start until sometime in July. And at the pace I've been going, man, July might as well be 4 years from now. Who knows how long it's going to take for us to get that far. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this one, and pretty good to look at. I, again, don't really think that Dom DiMaggio is a Hall of Famer, but I do think he's a player that we should know maybe a little bit more about, because I do think that there's a lot of good things to say about him, a lot of interesting stuff. And unfortunately, if you're an average baseball fan, you're not going to think about Dom DiMaggio. Even if you're a historically minded fan, you won't think about him unless you play replays. That's why we play. That's why we do these replays. I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.